Joining me on the podcast today is qualified run coach and well-known personal trainer, James Stirling, AKA the London fitness guy. James was an early adapter on the online fitness scene. He strives to create a community with a deep connection that doesn't feel intimidated and scared of the health and fitness space. The fitness industry can feel pretty overwhelming at times, and James is someone that takes all that away. James has achieved huge success in the industry. He's found his formula and reveals this in our conversation today. He's a great believer that you can do anything you put your mind to. We chat about the difference between laziness and physically being strained to do something, and the importance of regulating yourself when enduring the stresses of everyday life. And he discusses how breathwork and meditation can be instrumental in achieving this. For someone who is seen to be at the top of his fitness level, we talked through his previous health scares during the London Marathon, when he suffered a terrifying panic attack, and how he dealt with this, especially with the anticipation of his next challenge of running 6 half marathons in 6 different countries, a huge milestone for him. We discuss in this episode his interpretation of success and whether success means you are happy.
Guys, I'm incredibly proud to say that my first book, Fortune Favours the Brave, published by Penguin, is now in stores to purchase, or you can order your copy online. The book consists of 76 short lessons on finding strength in vulnerability. Adversity is something you will inevitably face in life. I wrote this book to share and showcase how to process that and what can come from it. Adversity is something we wish would never happen to us, but it does. I want you to understand, though, that it can inspire you to achieve incredible things, not just for yourself, but for others too. Everyone on this earth is born amazing at something. It is just a case of finding out what that is. Life is incredibly short and valuable, so make it count. You may find that you don't believe in your ability or fearful to test yourself. By the end of this book, I believe you will. To get yourself a copy now, it can be purchased at Waterstones, Amazon, or by simply clicking the link on my Instagram bio, Joshua Patterson_JP, now.
Welcome, Squire. Oh, God. I'm so happy to have you here right now. It's, do you know what I find with our relationship, right? It's one of those where I could go 20 years without seeing you and you just pick up where you kind of left off.
It's like we never left that gym all those years ago.
It's mental, isn't it? Do you ever look at life right now and think, you know, where you were not even that many years ago and sort of like how far you've come? I mean, to give you guys listening some context, like many, many years ago, probably what, seven years ago?
7, 8 years ago, yeah.
You know, James reached out to me and he kind of was fresh, I guess, in the scene and just trying to network and get out there and was looking for individuals to train. And he came on board as my PT at the time. And he was just so helpful at that particular time in my life, just both as like a mentor, a friend, you know, just in terms of physical improvements. I mean, it changed so much. And obviously for most of you that have continued to follow his journey on from there, I mean, what you've achieved is it's phenomenal, bud.
Thanks. What an intro. I mean, I guess for me, I don't really look back. I'm probably really bad at doing that myself, kind of taking a moment to step back and look over the years. But for me, I'm just doing the same thing I was back then. I'm sharing something I'm really passionate about, I love doing. And, you know, people say that work doesn't feel like work when they're enjoying what they're doing. I know it's really cliche and cheesy. Obviously, there's moments where I'm stressed, but every day I wake up and I'm sharing a passion. And I don't think there's a better job than being able to do that. So my life hasn't really changed since back then. I'm just sharing things in different ways.
I mean, when you look at this space, I mean, some might look at it and think it's incredibly saturated. I mean, like every Tom, Dick and Harry right now can get into the fitness space, whether they're qualified to be in it or not. I guess everyone has an opinion. What do you think the formula is to your success? Like, why is it you've stood out amongst so many other people? Like, I mean, your growth over the past number of years is incredible.
I think I've always had accessibility as the forefront, which I guess opens you up to a larger pool of people to work with. But my message from day one of starting on social media as London Fitness Guy is exactly the same as it was then now. And that ethos hasn't changed. I want people to be able to exercise and not feel frightened by it, intimidated by it, feeling they can't do it because they haven't got equipment or a gym access. I just want people to be able to realize that actually fitness is huge, and going for a walk or going to the gym, whatever you're doing is fitness. So I think that's made my approach more accessible to more people, but also I think it's made me a better coach because I'm far more considerate and understanding of people's situation.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this the other day, right? I was chatting to my sister and we were talking about a time in her life where she really wanted to get into acting. Like that was the big goal. And she had applied for this particular drama school and they were like, "How old are you?" And she said, "Oh, I'm this age." And they turned her away. She was really confused by that. She was like, why would you not give me the shot now? And they said, no disrespect to you, but what life experience do you have? And she was like, "Well, I feel like I've had a lot. Like even at a young age, you can still be exposed to things." They were like, "We don't dispute that, but in order to be the best at your craft, sometimes it's not actually about the acting itself. It's about the experiences that you inherit throughout life in order to put on the best performance." And I was kind of thinking about that when it comes to something like fitness, right? Where, yourself as a coach, it's not always sometimes I think about the technical side of things, the knowledge that you have, but actually the experience as well. And I think how you connect with your clients, I guess the things that you've been exposed to over the past number of years, do you think that's the asset that you have in order to give the best possible service to that individual by connecting to them on maybe a far deeper emotional level?
Absolutely. I think as a PT, your number one role should be to make the person you're training want to come back and see you, because you're making fitness fun for them and making it something that perhaps felt like a chore into something that now they look forward to doing. So first of all, I think that's one of the most important parts as a personal trainer in person. There are thousands, millions of trainers far more experienced than I am, far more qualifications and expertise. But I like to think that I can connect with people on a level that makes exercise fun, but also gives them the science to be able to understand and learn, to give them the tools to carry on doing it themselves for the rest of their life.
Yeah, I mean, and few could compete with your hairline, to be honest with you. That's always going to
Thank
be a
you.
winner.
Yeah, I mean, my hairline is getting worse, but it's there's a full head of hair there, so I'm grateful for that.
Fella, if yours is getting worse, then I'm done. I'm gonna be wearing a toque tomorrow.
You're hard on yourself. You're looking great. You're looking great.
I mean, honestly, man, like I just, it's such a pleasure, I think, just seeing how things have evolved for you. And I think especially the community, I think that's the thing that you've really achieved, in my opinion, more than most, in terms of, I think you've really understood what your why is. And I think you found the formula in order to connect that with people. And I think when you look at the level of engagement that you have, and actually when people share their views with you, like how positive it's been, it really does impact their life. And I think also you're not one dimensional. I think you keep evolving in this space. And I think that's hugely important. From an outsider's view, you're not necessarily doing something because you're following a trend. You're doing it because I think you yourself have been affected by something in certain ways. And I think it's how you can then translate that into, said performance in order to make the best outcome for that individual. And that's, even for somebody like myself, it's been hugely insightful to learn from that.
I think over the last couple of years, I said to myself, I never want to stop learning. And I think I looked at where I was and I thought, actually, it's been a while now that I haven't upskilled or learned something new or explored something I was passionate about aside from just lifting weights or doing a workout. And my own approach to fitness, perhaps as I've aged as well, I'm 35 now, so I'm not crazy old, but I think my own experience and interests have evolved massively over the last 10 years. And through things like mental health and meditation and all these kind of sorts of things that have come together, my ethos has got a bit bigger in terms of what I want to share and how I can create a more holistic approach to fitness that isn't just about workouts, but about the things you do outside of that workout time. And I actually shared a post the other day where I was saying, you do a workout, it's 6% of your day. Well, what are you doing for the other 94% that supports everything that's going on inside your body, your stress levels, your sleep, your fueling, your diet, your hydration, all of these things? That's your 94% of your body. And I think when I kind of started to realize this, I thought I need to do more because it's a bigger package now. It's a bigger process.
Speaking from personal experience, we often focus so much on the physical when it comes to the gym specifically. But actually, I think it's really important to highlight the psychological state that you're into. And I think you almost need to train that as much as you do the physical, because I think there are certainly challenges that will come with the physical in terms of acceptance, because we constantly say we strive for more, but what is more and how do we get fulfillment from more? Sometimes I think we can then end up finding ourselves with probably quite an unhealthy relationship, maybe with the gym or from a nutritional side of things. And ultimately, it's about balance. We don't want to add something that's a further stress to our body or to our lives. And sometimes it feels like that's the direction in which it's going to, right? If you look at, I guess, at how invested people are now in high rocks, whether that be a fast-paced marathon or an ultra, it's great that people are doing that, but then are they then becoming addicted to the feeling of adrenaline, and how sustainable is that going to be? I mean, I'd love to get your take on it.
Well, you mentioned stress there and lifestyle, I guess. I view everything as a stress, and an analogy I often give people is, imagine you've got a bucket, and every time you add something to that bucket, it's getting more full. So a stress, maybe it's your training, maybe it's childcare, work, financials, all of these things that top up the bucket. And it only takes one of those top ups for that bucket to overspill. And that transcends into something like anxiety, chronic stress, lack of sleep. And it's about managing that bucket to make sure it doesn't overspill.
I mean, do you see social media from that side of things then as a positive? I guess if you look at your platform and the way you articulate yourself, or can you see that becoming the negative? Because I guess when an individual may be inspired by a person, they probably aren't taking into account the lifestyle that individual lives or the freedoms that that individual may have in comparison to themselves.
I am also inspired by people I see on social media who are doing amazing things, high rocks, marathon times, in incredible times. And I think to myself, why can't I do that? I train a lot. My diet's pretty good. I sleep pretty well. And I'm still thinking, why can't I do that? But my job is 9 to 5. It's not a creator job where I'm, creating videos. I sit behind a laptop for most of the day, which, is essentially kind of boring. But I don't have as much free time that I perhaps used to have to be able to balance the training as much as I'd like to, because it's not a priority for me. I do it to stay fit. I do it because I enjoy doing it. But I look at these people who have this amazing time, and I really think it's incredible. You're doing this, but it's not what I'm going to achieve, because my day-to-day doesn't allow me to do that.
Is there a way in which we can have these conversations, or we can highlight that to them, where, I don't know, you almost can take the pressure off the person?
I think it's amazing to take inspiration from what people are doing. But I think when you look at your own training plan, lifestyle, wherever it might be, event you're working towards, the first thing you need to look at is, how does my week look with this added stress of training, or added training sessions, whatever it might be, this time commitment I've committed to, especially when it comes to marathon training, where you're training for a long time and it's quite time consuming. You're doing long runs that are hours long on weekends. It takes a lot. And I think you have to be realistic about what you can achieve in your own lifestyle to achieve the goal that you want. If you're someone that works a lot and you've got young kids and, you've got all these lifestyle stresses, is it realistic to go and aim for a 2:30 marathon? Probably not. But can you still get through it from A to B injury-free with an amazing time and a time you're proud of at the end? Absolutely. So I think it is a case of just being realistic and where you're at and what you can realistically achieve.
In truth, have you found yourself at times when testing yourself or feeling passionate about something where you struggle to take your own advice?
All the time. Mainly with things like stress management. I'm talking a lot about stress at the moment because it's something I personally have struggled with. But, we all should be meditating. We all should be doing optimizing our recovery, sleeping 9 hours a day if we can, all of these things. But, it's unrealistic to think that's going to happen. And the way I look at the week is I set myself weekly non-negotiables. It might be 3 runs, 3 strength sessions. But I think where it becomes quite difficult is every week for most people is very different. your child gets sick, you're sick. It could be anything. And I always think a really good approach is on a Sunday night to look at your week ahead, look at your calendar, look at your lifestyle, and say, what can I do this week? And not be hard on yourself if those 3 sessions becomes 2 and those 3 runs becomes 1, but recognizing, well, that's your non-negotiables. And if I hit them, amazing. If I can do more, brilliant. But that's my non-negotiables, and that's what I'm going to aim for.
I feel like, and this isn't necessarily pointing fingers, but I think when you look at maybe specific countries, like I think the British approach to something could be quite different maybe to the way the Americans would approach something. I feel like when it comes to America, they're charismatic, they're out there, their views on things are so incredibly strong. And I think with that fitness space, you know, when you look at some of the major influences in this space, like Goggins, you know, like every second counts, make it work. I think that's great. But I think at the same time, is that a realistic approach where, like you said, if you are in reality facing burnout or you've been exposed to a highly stressful day at work and your energy levels are rock bottom, and actually the priority is just waking up the next day and approaching that day as it comes, regulating yourself. If you've got a plan or a marathon in place and you are meant to be running 18K intervals that day, when somebody says to you, like, make every second count, a lot of people would probably beat themselves up for cancelling that run and see it as failure, when in reality, I actually am starting, maybe from personal experiences, to start seeing that as common sense. What is more important, sanity of mind and your health, or the temporary performance that you're focused on? Because I think you've really got to find a balance. And I think the advice you've just given there, where assessing each week, is so important for people to hear, because what works one week isn't necessarily going to work the next. And I think it's almost how to navigate and readapt each day as it comes.
I think it's flexibility in being able to, well, recognize that and not be hard on yourself when you perhaps can't make a run session or a gym session, but maybe be trying to fit it into a different part of the day. And just looking, I guess, from a kinder approach to yourself.
Can you tell just what the distinctive difference between being lazy and strain is? Because I think that's the confusion in a person's mind, where they may be perceived as being lazy when in reality they are hugely strained, I guess, by the circumstances that they're faced with.
Again, I really struggle with this. And I think being a personal trainer and in the fitness world, there's an expectation, an assumption that you are highly motivated all the time. For me personally, this year, for example, I've probably gone 6 months of this year so far not motivated at all. And quite often I'd wake up at 6 a.m. with the intention of doing a workout. I'd sit down, I'd have a coffee, I'd look at my watch, it's 7:30 and I've not gone and done a workout and my window's gone. That for me, that's laziness, that's procrastination, that's not doing the work I intended to do because I can't be bothered. But when you can do it, and you're feeling motivated, and I think when you get out the front door, that's your workout done. You just need to get out the front door, because you never get out the front door and then come back in. That's your leave. So for me, laziness is procrastinating and putting it off, and motivation is getting out the front door.
I was in the gym recently with Wally, you know, one of my coaches, and you know, a girl really anxiously came up to him. I think quite evident from his physique that he knows what he's talking about, and he does. And was sort of embarrassed actually to ask the question of how to use a particular machine. And you could just kind of see her face light up when he was so attentive with her about probably what weight was most appropriate, what that foundation should look like and how she could progress with it, but equally the movement too. You know, I'm guilty of it as well. Even to this day, and I've been going to the gym for I don't know how many years, I still will get certain movements incorrectly. And that's why it's been so important to bring in coaches like Wally or Nick Garcia to help me out with that, to prevent injury from occurring. Because a lot of my injuries probably, in all honesty, have been sustained because of the mistakes that I've been making. And actually, I feel like in these spaces, we need to try and educate more. It's all well and good giving memberships to individuals, but then when they're going into a space that they're not familiar with, how really do you learn? I mean, you can obviously watch YouTube or oversee other people working out, but like you said, unless you have like a structure in place or a plan that's been tailored for you by a specific coach, I don't know. I feel like it's quite a challenging space to navigate.
Honestly, I feel like the best thing as a new person going into a gym is to spend, £60, whatever it is, for a PT session with the local PT, and to say, I don't want anything else, but I want you to show me how to use every piece of machine. And then you go in there, you know how to use everything. It's one stress gone from your gym experience, and it's money well spent. The next thing is just to build the confidence in doing it. And, I can't remember the first time I did a bench press, but I'm sure it was probably awful. It was bad technique. It might have been really lightweight, but it is what it is. I wish it was. I don't think I've ever hit those milestones. But yeah, I just think familiarity and confidence is such a good foundation for any new person that's new to fitness.
I mean, if you look at the majority of your life right now, you are committed to making other people feel confident and happy. Where would you say you are at right now, my man?
That is what I get my kicks from. It's helping other people and,
But what about yourself? Not other people. You're focusing all your attention on other people. Where is James at right now?
Honestly, I feel like I'm on a real journey of growth in myself, of realizing what I think is important to me, where I want to take my life to. And actually, over the years, being completely honest, when I first started, like 20 to 25, it was about money. It was about trying to get a watch or a car, stupid material things. Now my enjoyment in life is far less about that sort of stuff and more just about feeling calm, which sounds ridiculous, but it's about feeling balanced, and that's what I want to do. I'm not really interested in any of that sort of stuff. Money isn't really a big motivator for me. It's more about feeling good in where I'm at each day. I'm very, very intrinsic on how I feel, which can be great, but it can also be your worst nightmare, because when things aren't going to plan, I really feel it.
Do you think you need to achieve success in order to get a full understanding of what that actually means to you? Because like you just said there, you had achieved all the things that you'd set yourself out to achieve, but when achieving it in reality, you would realize that it probably looks far different. Is that the kind of advice that you would give to someone? Because that's something that I hear quite a lot from individuals, where they have these aspirations to achieve a certain thing. They get to that point in their life and it almost feels anticlimactic, and the direction that they then take their life seems to be in a very different direction. And more often than not, it's less materialistic and more fulfillment.
I mean, a prime example is what we were talking about earlier, social media. I think when anyone starts posting content with the intention of growing social media, they have a goal in mind, 100,000 followers, 500, whatever it might be, which is a ridiculous thing, because it, at the end of the day, it is just a number. And I've tried to really distance myself from that. But I think for me, I was posting and thinking, wouldn't it be amazing to hit 1 million followers on Instagram, like 1 million people? I kept saying to myself, that's Wembley 10 times, like full. And I kind of hit it, and I just didn't really have an emotion, which sounds ridiculous, but it was just kind of like, amazing, cool. Like, how should I feel? I don't know. And I was trying to think to myself the other day, what do I actually feel most fulfilled from? And it's probably times when I'm running or exercising without a stress, or without thinking, what am I doing in an hour's time? Basically being in the moment. That is when I feel most fulfilled. And now I'm trying to do a lot to try and keep myself in the present moment, because it's very easy to constantly be looking ahead. And that's what I found I was doing for the last 10 years. I'd have something, cover of Men's Fitness. What's next? And it didn't make me happy.
I think that, it's a really powerful thing you've just said there, because I think when it comes to, fulfillment and success, and I hope this makes people feel better, is that I don't think it's a singular thing. I think it's something that is ever changing. As you get older, I think the goalposts are continuously moved. And I think that's a good thing. What you aspire to be when you're 25, I think is going to be very different to what you are at 30, what you are at 35 or 40 or 50. And I think it's just being mindful of that. And actually, success for me also, I think, is a great education, because actually in order to inherit that, I think gives you the opportunity to process it and realize what actually is important in life. Because there's nothing worse than, I think, working for something and just having that emptiness feeling that so many people have. Like when you look at running, for instance, there are so many individuals that I've run with where they've achieved the most phenomenal things, or somebody's come up to me and had a conversation where they're like, I've been training for 100K, or I've been training for a marathon or a 5K, and I crossed that finish line and I just felt empty. And I'm thinking to myself, but maybe you're missing the mark. Maybe actually the fulfillment and the success was actually the process to get to that point. How did you feel in those moments? And they're like, that's a really good point, because leading up to that, I felt amazing. And I felt so proud of myself that I remained consistent with the training to that point. I never missed a session. And actually crossing that finish line, I think, again, it's trying to normalize that situation for people where they've almost been in survival mode for 4 weeks, 18 weeks, 60, whatever it might be, whatever their plan might be. And I think when you cross that finish line, they also have to take into account that their body has just released. It no longer has to suffer as much as it has. And I think that's probably a good thing, but it's how do you communicate that to someone where they don't see that as a failure of feeling?
I mean, you've probably led really nicely into when I finished London Marathon, and it was completely that, but on a awful scale. I think when you finish a marathon, it's supposed to be that medal moment. That's your victory lap. It's you cross the finish line, and like you were saying, this almost burden at times of training, because it can feel like a burden when you've got to go for a long run on Saturday and you don't want to, and all that sort of stuff. But for me, when I finished London Marathon, I didn't train well at all. I was very naive, and I was training a lot with other things in work. I just didn't train well. But I crossed that finish line, and this moment will stick with me forever. And my phone died, and I didn't have any credit cards. Still carried credit cards on me at that time. Don't seem to do that anymore. But I didn't have anything on me, no way of communicating with anyone. And I could just feel my heart rate rising. And it just led to a panic attack, or what I didn't know was a panic at the time. I actually thought it was a heart attack. And I remember I was standing underneath one of the arches, and there was a security guard there, and he came up to me and he said, "Are you okay?" And I just looked at him with what I would describe as tunnel vision. I just couldn't really see an awful lot. And I was just on my knees basically. And I said, "I think I'm having a heart attack." And he took me to St. John's ambulance, and they hooked me up, and thankfully they charged my phone for me, which I was very grateful for, and gave me some sweets and things. I started to come around. I thought, what was going on? I didn't really know. But that moment led to, 10 years of anxiety, panic attacks, and trying to manage stress.
It's not really the outcome that you probably fantasized about, but there's so many people that will relate to what you've just said there. And it's so important that you share that, because again, I think we build up this moment, don't we, that we've worked so hard for it, and we expect this euphoria, and I've experienced that. I've crossed the finish line, and I've not feel lost, but I felt empty. And sometimes it can take a year or 2 years at the most random time for it to hit you, where you're like, wow, I did that.
I still look back at London Marathon and think to myself, amazing, because it was so hard. I was underprepared for it. And, you go into dark moments doing some of these endurance events. And I remember going through Canary Wharf, and my mind was just nothing. I was just get to the finish line. That's all I wanted to do, hobbling to the finish line. But that moment, that race, that crossing the finish line, it probably shaped who I am today more than anything I've ever done in my life. From good times bad times have led to now much better times. But I would say genuinely, I probably went through 3 to 5 years of hell after that.
Although I personally, as a friend, would wish you'd never been through that, it did shape you. And if you look at how it steered the direction that you live your life now, in terms of the decisions that you made, where you live, who your now wife is, if you look at how your career has evolved and how you wish to support your clients, great things can come from these really difficult periods in life. And sometimes that's the hardest part, is actually just putting that foot in front of the other in order to make that progress. And that can take years. Sometimes people never recover from that. And I'm so glad that you did, because running now is something that you have so heavily invested in, which is amazing. I mean, next year, you've set yourself a phenomenal challenge. You're going to be running 6 half marathons in 6 different countries. To go from a person who thought he was having a heart attack to even contemplating something like that, I just think is testament to your character. And I think it's going to be so interesting to see how you feel about all of those, because knowing you have 6, I wonder how differently each one of those feel.
Yeah, I think my main thing, I've said this earlier on, is being in the present moment. Just in everything I do in life, that's always my aim. It makes me a calmer person. It makes me make better decisions. And, I was saying about the bucket and filling it up with water and overspilling. It's being in the present moment allows me to control everything. And when I feel stressed, I bring myself back to the present moment. I focus on my breathing. And we can learn a lot from our breath. It's probably the most underutilized tool we have at our disposal to tell how we're feeling. And when you look at how you breathe, it tells you a lot about your body. And, when you feel stressed or when something goes wrong, you get a call, you get some bad news, what's the first thing that happens? You start to breathe heavily. You start to panic. Your breath rate increases. You breathe from your upper chest. But it's the same across stress. That's just a stress response. So what I really try and do now is slow down my breathing and be aware of how I'm breathing. And there are people that are breathing, inhaling and exhaling 50 times in a minute, which is a huge amount of breath to be taking. And basically, you're just telling your body that you're stressed. It's your fight or flight response. You're under pressure. You're under stress. So I'm really, really aware of that now. And even when I feel angry or stressed or just not right, I will sit down and think, slow down my breathing, slow down my exhale, give myself that moment to make a better decision.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be really interesting, I think, for a lot of people. So meditation and breath work is something that you're hugely invested in now. And actually, I think the synergy between that and running, or actually, do you know what, for any sport for that matter, I think is going to be hugely valuable. You just touched on there about regulating stress. If somebody finds themselves in that really compromised situation, when it comes to something like, would you prioritize meditation or would you prioritize breath work? And if it is breath work, what process would you take in order to try and bring that down?
A lot of people find meditation hard. Obviously, meditating and breathing have a link, but they're not the same thing. But sitting down, first of all, or sitting comfortably would be the first thing to do. The second thing would be to shut your eyes or keep them open if you prefer, and just be aware of how you're breathing. Don't change your breath, just be aware of how you're breathing. And then I'd start to try and slow down the exhale. So when you breathe, you have 2 responses. You inhale and you exhale, obviously. When you inhale, your heart rate actually increases. And when you exhale, your heart rate decreases. So your exhale is your parasympathetic, your calming response to your breath. So the more you can prolong that, and this is evidence-based, this is not just me saying this is science, the longer you can prolong that exhale, the more you're in that parasympathetic response, the calming response to your breathing.
I don't know if anyone can relate to this, but with like an ADHD mind, I think that's, it's something that is so good for you. But again, it's just having the ability to just be at peace in order to do something like that. But also maybe being sympathetic of your situation, where don't apply the pressure too much, to yourself. When it comes to something like the meditation, I used to get so frustrated how I just could not be my thoughts. I couldn't be at peace. And then somebody actually said something that I found really helpful and quite insightful. And their example was, if somebody comes in to de-dust a room, the reality is that going to be spotless on the first attempt? Absolutely not. So why would you expect the same thing to be when you meditate?
Meditation is acceptance. And I think a lot of people who do meditate, who find it hard to meditate, it's almost like going into battle when they do it. They're thinking, right, I'm going to block out all these thoughts. I'm not going to think about this. If it comes up in my head, I'm going to shift it away. I'm going to come back to this. Well, actually, sit there, focus on your breathing. If something comes up, it's not an issue. You accept it as a thought. You come back to your breath. You come back into relaxation. You just repeat that loop. And meditation isn't about falling asleep. It's not about that. It can be used for sleep, but it's not about falling asleep. It's about feeling restfully alert and restfully aware. And I think that really changed my perception of meditation. And also, there are so many types of meditation out there. It doesn't have to be sitting with your eyes shut, in a spiritual position. That's not what it has to be about. You can meditate whilst you walk. You can meditate with your eyes open. You can hum, and you can stimulate your vagus nerve for relaxation. So you can essentially lower your heart rate variability, increase your heart rate variability just through doing meditation short term. Again, this is proven. This study is out there showing this. It lowers your heart rate. So if you're stressed, what do you want to do? Well, you want to lower your heart rate to give you that sense of calm. So meditation works, but it's just finding the right tools and practicing it. I almost think of it as your body, you do a workout, an exercise, but your mind, you do the workout and the exercise, and that is your meditation tool.
Yeah, I just wish my mind wasn't so easily distracted. Like last time I tried to meditate, I remember it so well. I got myself, actually, I did what you said you don't need to do. I got myself into what I thought was like this core position for meditation. And I remember just being sat there, closed my eyes, and I was doing like my breath work, and I was like, yeah, we're finding a rhythm. And then out of nowhere, I was like, oh, you know that test where they leave stale donuts? Would I be that guy who would eat one? And then I started pondering about this for like 3 minutes and was like, yeah, no, do you know what? I probably would. And then from that, I just went, oh, I could actually really do with the donut. And then my session just consisted of thinking about a donut. And I came out of it going, I've not actually fixed anything. I've just got myself hungry more than anything.
I think the moment you begin to take what you said there, the donuts come into your mind, and then you become frustrated on that thought coming into your mind, it's really hard to shift that frustration. Whereas actually, if you just be like, yeah, it's funny, I was thinking about donuts, let it go. Come back to the breathing, the breath, and then let it go again. You almost need to give yourself a different distraction, and the distraction is coming back to your breath. And then from there, you can just come back to a moment of stillness.
I think what you've just said there is it's about normalizing a situation and normalizing you as a person, because people will put you on such a pedestal, right? You are the one who's emphasizing this practice. And I think people will probably come into this space and look at you and go, well, he clearly won't struggle from this because of his expertise. And actually hearing that you will still find yourself in that position too, I think is going to be really refreshing for a lot of people to listen to.
I mean, I listen to a lot of podcasts from, Buddhist Zen masters, and they have the same thing. They've been meditating for hours, for years and years, but they will still have thoughts that come into their mind.
This week's episode is sponsored by Runner. Runner is a personalized running coaching app helping runners of all abilities train for any goal. From a first 5K to a marathon, even an ultra marathon. When the time is right for you, your plan can be created within a minute and ready to go. With each plan, Runner provides all the help a runner requires, including strength and conditioning, and you can also reach out to the team at any time via the support tab inside the app. For a 2-week free trial on any personalized running plan, use the code PHOENIX. No matter your goal, Runner is there to help you achieve it.
Running is it's been around for a very, very long time, and yet it's still such a misunderstood sport. And I think some of it has to come from guidance and then some from trial and error. I still find myself being humbled by this space. And actually, even now, like with my health, for instance, things haven't improved this year, and I still find myself in quite a difficult place trying to navigate that. And, for me, I was trying to prioritize running a fast marathon at possibly the worst time, and then having to make a really tough decision to cancel one of the marathons that I trained incredibly hard for, and then even coming to the conclusion that actually running for time in the second marathon that I'd set myself just wasn't right, because realistically I wasn't even really going to achieve the time that I'd initially set myself. So what was the point of burning myself out further and it actually being counterproductive in terms of trying to progress my health, whatever the state it may be in? And I found that really difficult. And again, I think it's chasing the adrenaline. Those high hits of dopamine for me almost justified it, when in reality, I need to take a step back and I need to decompress. And although that makes it feel like I'm digressing, I'm actually progressing much further. But I think it's accepting that I'm finding quite challenging. And, I like to be expressive in these episodes with somebody like yourself, because again, people might put me on a pedestal with the things that I've achieved. And, it's very rare that I think when you see someone who achieves a certain performance, maybe showing chinks in their armor. But again, it's about normalizing a person and a situation. And I think that's how people can identify where it's like, okay, cool, I can really, I guess, set myself the heights of highs, but equally I have to understand how I can bring that down a notch. We can't always be at top level.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people struggle with doing the calming things, but like I said to you earlier, that's the 94%. Sleep is another one. So I think I read a stat the other day that said 30% of us aren't getting around 7 hours of sleep a night. But, what I find frustrating is when people say they aren't getting enough sleep, but then they're on their mobile for the hour before, they're scrolling Instagram and TikTok 5 minutes before, sat in bed. It's like, well, you can put processes in place to improve your sleep. When it comes to sleep, I'm kind of digressing a little bit, but the routine you set from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed, that is your routine. It doesn't start an hour before bed where you get comfortable and you start to wind down. But, in the morning, something as simple as getting 10 minutes outside in daylight. It doesn't have to be sunny, just daylight is going to set you up for a stronger sleep performance in that evening. And these little things that we can do have a huge impact. It's all about just, training your circadian rhythm to be able to know, actually, this is when I wake up, this is when I go to bed, because your body is relying on that to be able to set the process for you.
I found myself the other day, we were so busy where, annoyingly now, when you look at our phones used to be just a thing of pleasure, whereas now it really is your office, right? Everything can be done on your phone. And we had a particular long day, and the daily average on my phone was 17 hours. That made me feel sick, because that's not intentional. That was a real wake-up call.
And it's an energy exchange. People will say they're really tired. Why am I so tired? Why do I feel so burnt out? Well, every time you are looking at your phone and processing what's on your phone, there is an energy exchange taking place. You're zapping your energy to do that task that you're doing on your phone, whether it's scrolling Instagram or replying to an email. And, we have a battery. And every time you take away that energy and you're running on flat and you're still trying to do these things, well, of course you're going to feel burnt out.
When you look at I guess, impact of energy, it's so interesting how you and we both live in London, but you were close to Battersea, weren't you? You and I live probably 3 miles apart, and the level of impact, positive impact, I guess the move has made for you just living in a slightly more, I wouldn't say it's not central London, but you've moved further afield. The benefits that's had to you, and I was saying to you, in the area that I live, it stresses me out. It's so interesting, isn't it, how difference 3 miles can actually make to the mindset.
Moving just a few miles out of London, but it's having access to green space that's been my game changer. I spend most of my time outside as often as I can in Wimbledon Common, running, walking. That's my de-stress. And, whether it's listening to music, sometimes just sitting, just, again, doing meditation. I sound like I'm kind of like, really kind of yogi hippie. I'm not. But just taking that moment to understand where I'm at in my body, I think is, for me, crucial.
Quite recently, I've started to realize if I've managed to eat all my meals within the day, because I think that's one of my struggles, is probably eating a little bit too late, and I've managed to get my admin done. When I've got my daughter, I put her to bed at 7:00, and we do the same thing. We read a book, we lay with one another, and we have like a little bit of talk time where we just kind of just chat, and it could be about anything. And there's been several times recently where, knowing that there's no responsibility, teeth have been brushed, lights are off, everything's ready and prepared for the next day, I've actually fallen asleep at 7:30 with her. And that's not me. I am, unfortunately, that guy who sleeps sometimes less than 6 hours, finding himself doing unnecessary admin until God knows what time. But that's really highlighted to me, actually, when I can fall asleep and how much sleep has been needed. And I've lost so much of that. And so it's just repositioning it. But again, because we're constantly, or I'm speaking about myself here, because I'm probably fueled on adrenaline consistently, I'm not even allowing myself just that moment of, I need this.
Yeah.
But I've created it by being with her. And that realization now has really triggered something where it's okay, maybe it's just being mindful about putting yourself into the situations where you can have that wake up call.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly, I used to get up, I'm not talking like years ago, a year ago, before I kind of really started to explore this stuff and question myself, I guess. I used to wake up and I'd be like a battery, like buzzing straight away. And I'd buzz when I went to bed. And I had this constant kind of buzz energy that I thought at the time was like, oh, I'm super motivated. But actually, I don't think it was healthy to have that. And knowing the difference now when I feel calm against that buzz, I can feel the positive impact of that.
I think with people that are listening right now, I think if you look at a lot of the things that you've achieved, of recent, it's been overcoming certain fears. Like when you talk about London Marathon and the implications of that finish line had on you. But actually, if you look off the back of that, what you've gone on to achieve, what could you give it, what advice could you give to someone that's listening? Because there'll be a lot of people that will be faced with that. And I think it would be really beneficial for them to start their own journey.
Well, I think therapy really did give me a boost. I think everyone, if I could now, I'd probably still have therapy. I just don't have the time, ironically, at the moment. But I'm quite bad at only using therapy, for example, when I need it. But it gave me a lot of tools to be able to manage my anxiety. And, to give you an idea of how bad my anxiety was, obviously it's easy to say about the London Marathon, but when I was personal training, I remember going to a session, I was training a client and I had to leave. I was just bawling my eyes out. I still to this day have no idea why. And then I got home and I thought, this is it. I'm going to get a therapist. I'm going to work out what's going on. And that changed my life. It gave me a lot of tools to be able to better manage my feelings. And I think that's why I'm so keen on tuning into the breath, because now it allows me to recognize when I feel stress or when I'm going to have a panic attack, to be able to take the time out so it doesn't happen. And that's the best thing I can do. I think just listening to your body across training, across stress, across sleep is the best thing you can do.
If you look at the position you're in right now and you look at the things that you've achieved, you could probably tick off most of the things that you and I discussed many years ago in terms of what you fulfilled. What does success...
I think I've ticked a lot of boxes of things I am really proud of, but I wouldn't sit here now and speak from a position of success. That's never gone. I actually find it quite embarrassing for myself. I don't know if that's a reflection on me more than anything, but what does success look like is waking up each day and being happy to be alive, I guess. I follow a lot of like stoic things, and I really want to get to a position where I wake up and I live every single day as if it's my last. That is my goal. I want to wake up and live it, and that's it. Funny enough, me and my wife often say to ourselves, if you were to give a percentage of happiness right now, what would it be? And for me, most of the time, it's over 85%, which I think is pretty good. Everyone has stresses, so I'd love to be 100. But again, going back to being realistic, I don't think that's really going to happen, because I still have stresses in day-to-day life that bring it down. But to wake up every day with a happiness of 85, 90%, I think that's pretty good. How about you?
In terms of gratitude, I would say I'm 100. I couldn't be more grateful for the life that I've been given. And I don't believe it is fluke. A lot of it, I feel grateful that I've been gifted this life. It's taken a lot of hard work to get to that point in order to create that opportunity. I don't believe it just falls on your lap. I think in terms of contentment right now, I'm at the lowest I've been in a very long time. And what I think is really important for anyone that's listening to this is, and this wasn't me trying to dictate my happiness. I didn't think that this is what would bring me happiness. But when we talk about materialism, I've worked really hard and I've upgraded my car, and it's a car that a lot of people would be really impressed by. I'm renovating my home so it becomes my dream home. I'm working with brands that I have dreamt of working with that can help me elevate the dreams that I have always dreamt of. And yet I'm sat here before you right now saying that I'm unhappy. And so, again, it's not a case of I'm not grateful for everything I've just said to you. It's a case of I think we need to distinguish the two separately. But what I would say is that I've been through this before and I've come out of it, and I know I'll come out of it again. I think what's different about this before, and I've articulated this in a recent podcast I did, is that I'm more familiar with this situation. Although it's difficult to process, I'm not as necessarily overwhelmed by it as I once was. And I think that comes down to the people I've surrounded myself with. And I think being able to have the strength to speak openly when I am struggling, because I think that's the challenge that we're faced with, that even when we've been through this multiple times, we still find ourselves in that grey area of like, have I shared this too many times? But I think when you surround yourself with the right people, they see the best version of you, and they can understand that life is about peaks and troughs. And when you're going through that trough, that's when I think a true friend colleague or family member are there to support you and get you out of that period of time.
Without putting you on the spot, what do you think the main thing is that's causing you to feel that way?
I think it's an abundance of things. I think, as again, for anyone that listened to the recent podcast I recorded just on my own, I think it's my health. I think I'm 35 years old, and I've been able to be pretty ill-free for most of my life. And when I have been ill, I've eradicated it quite quickly. And I think I've been so grateful for the immunity I've had in order to achieve that. This time round, it's an illness that the specialist cannot understand what it is, and that's concerning. And the solutions aren't running out, but we've used a lot of solution or supposed solutions that haven't worked. And I guess that's left me feeling quite vulnerable of like, is this for life? For me, I've always envisioned myself, especially with my daughter, as like this superhuman guy. And, immortality's almost been stripped. Like, I am vulnerable. And, at any point in time, if it's something even more severe, I think it's the first time in my life where I'm like, wow, like this is how quickly life can change for you. Like, this might not be a temporary thing. This could be you for the rest of your life. So I guess it's the anxiety of what we're guilty of thinking about the things that haven't even happened yet. How
much more stress do you feel that the worry of the future adds to what you've got now?
It's great question. I think you're right. It's the fear of the unknown, but why fear something that hasn't happened? Just be present. And although I'm saying that to you right now and to the people that are listening, that's why I asked you the question earlier, is that I'm great at assessing things, and I'm great at advising people when they're going through something, but sometimes I can't hear my own message. And that's why, these conversations with somebody like yourself, it's like a therapy, because we can have these discussions, and actually I can come away from this and I'm speaking to you, and that gives me an opportunity to reflect on that point.
Yeah. There's also a great book which is called The Power of Now. It's by Eckhart Tolle, and it's a hard read. The first 4 chapters, really hard. But it's all about being in the moment, and exactly this. When something happens, how do you stop yourself from thinking about the future consequences and just addressing, well, how am I feeling now? Is this an issue for me right now? Truly an issue for me right now? And how much stress is it causing for me in this present moment? And those sort of questions that you ask yourself when you're facing something like this, I think are really important. Because again, me, myself, I've gone through this where I've spent so much time panicking about the future, and I would say 99% of the things I panicked about never materialized. It was wasted energy, wasted stress. But if you can just reflect on the present moment, how are you right now? Is what you're going through actually a major issue for you right now? Or is it something that's going to pass and you're going to look back and be like, that was a waste of time worrying about that?
I mean, time will tell. And I hope that's the case, because I think what's been humbling about this situation is that everything I was doing was for short-term reward almost. I was prioritizing running 2 marathons, but was that really the most important thing? Like, what was I doing that for? What actual reward was I going to get from running a marathon faster? What's really important is to get me back on track, to get my health in order, to feel myself once again. And those things will then come in turn, so it's, although we shouldn't look so much to the future to counter that, actually, I need to be thinking long term. What actions can I make right now to have a positive impact? Which is, if I keep progressing in this cycle, which evidently isn't working, my health is still going to be in the same place it's at right now, potentially a year from now. But I have an opportunity to rectify that. And so, that's why I'm making these decisive decisions to change that. And, this too shall pass, I think, is such a powerful line, because it's true. Like, I think what makes me feel better, and I'm sure when you've felt like this with your anxiety, it doesn't last forever. It could last a couple of days, it could potentially even last a month, but you then have those really nice positive moments and periods in your life. And so actually there's so much to be learnt from this. Like, even like I said, just talking to you, like, sometimes in a weird way, I find these really challenging moments in life a gift. And gifts aren't always something we want. I always compare it, like, how many times did we get given a pair of socks by your auntie at Christmas that they're Star Wars socks and you're 23?
I did notice them.
I don't want them, but now Halloween themed party, hello socks, we pull them out, right? And it's the case with these moments in life where this is a challenging period for me, but actually I am going to grow so much as a person from it. And with the work that I do and the work you do, when somebody comes to me with advice and they've struggled, I'm so much more in tune with that individual and how I can help them. And so for that, again, I'm grateful. And something that I keep stressing to people, adversity for me gives every individual one of the greatest gifts at all, which is empathy. And in this world right now, that's what scares me the most is that there seems to be a real lack of empathy. And I think with empathy, so much can be achieved. Passion, another strong word. I think with empathy comes passion. When you feel what a person's going through, what you're willing to do to try and improve that person's life or your own, I just think is unbelievable. I mean, that's where fulfillment really comes from, dedicating your life to something with true meaning. And that's all come from a really difficult and dark place. So in that sense, I start to see the positive and the light at the end of the tunnel. So, that's a very long-winded answer from your question, but I really appreciate you asking me that, because again, a lot of these conversations we can have as friends, it's not necessarily just surface level, but how often do we really find the time to just sit down or to exercise with one another and really get into the deeper rooted stuff about the individual?
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for my friends. They will probably say, stop calling me. And my wife always says, I've never seen anyone call so many people, but I don't WhatsApp my friends, I call them. And I've just got into this habit of it. And I think it's important, because you go deeper than just, how you doing? Great, cool. Or you don't reply for a week. And that's why I think this podcast is great, because it gives you an opportunity to have these conversations and go deeper than surface level, hey, how are you? So I'm really glad to have come on, and thank you for inviting me on.
You've nailed it, brother. Honestly, I knew this was going to be a great ep, and it has been, and I'm so proud of you, and 2025 for you will be a continuation of the amazing work that you do.
Thank you, mate.
Big love, broski.
Thank you.
Bye.
If you enjoyed today's podcast, you fatted biscuit, all I ask of you in return is that you push that subscribe button and leave a review. Unless it's a bad one, you can keep that, your sausage. Your support, though, makes such a difference to this podcast and enables it to grow and connect with even more people around the world.